Thank you so much for joining us today once again in this favorite show, The Knowledge Quest. My name is Mr. Mautia Eliud, and in our last episode we were discussing on quadratic expression and equation, and in that kind of discussion I told you that we dealt with expressions, then went to equations, and I gave you different formulas to which you're supposed to go through how to expand a different expression, then how to factorize expressions. Later on we went to equation and how to factorize that. I told you you're going to get definite answer for that, and I left you with an assignment where we had y is equals to 5 and y is equals to -2. That was the assignment I gave you, and I told you these are the roots, and you're supposed to form a quadratic equation or expression from these roots. You remember that. So I'm going just to go through, have a recap of it, then you ensure that you go through what you did earlier on and see if you got the right answer or not. Now, we said, how do you go about this when you're given the roots and you're supposed to find the quadratic equation that was used to obtain the same roots? I said you take this number to the other side of the equal sign. You're going to have y is equal to -5 is equals to 0, and this one is y minus +2 is equals to 0. Once you're at that point and all of them are equal to 0, you multiply the 2 to obtain the quadratic equation that was there when we had the values of y is equals to 5 and y is equals to 2. Therefore I'm going to have y minus 5 multiplied by y plus 2 is equals to 0. You also remember I said that the first bracket can open the second bracket, as well the second bracket can also be used to open the first bracket under expansion. So I'm going to do both of them again. So I'm going to have this as y minus 5 and y plus 2 is equals to 0. First bracket, open the second. So y, the first term, open everything. So y plus 2. Then second term is minus 5 into y plus 2. So I'm going to have y squared. Y times this one is plus 2y, -3, -5 multiplied by this is -5y, -5, and +2 is -10. Okay, so I'm going to have y, we add this, y squared, +2 minus 5, it's -3y minus 10 is equals to 0. And it means this was the quadratic equation that was used to obtain the roots, which is y is equals to 5 and y is equals to 2. As well, you can have this bracket opening this first one, which is y plus 2 and y minus 5. This means y into y plus 5 minus 5, then plus 2 into y minus 5 is equals to 0. Therefore I'm going to have y squared, this and this gives us minus 5y, this is minus 5, then plus 2y minus 10 is equals to 0. Select terms, -5 plus 2 is -3, so y squared minus 3y minus 10 is equals to 0. So that means this was the equation that was used to obtain the roots that you are given as y is equals to +5 and y is equals to -2. How do we prove that this is exactly what was used? Let's now move from this quadratic equation to get these roots. So y squared minus 3y minus 10 is equals to 0. I said, how do you solve that? You find two numbers. When you add, you get -3. The same number. When you multiply, you get -10. Which numbers are those? +5 and negative 2. We can have positive 5 and negative 2, or we can have positive 2 and negative 5. Which one is the correct one? Because if you take 5 plus negative 2, you get positive 3. But if you take positive 2 minus 5, you get 3. It means our second is the answer, negative 2 and positive. So y squared. So our A, B and C is 1, 3, negative 3 and negative 10. So y squared minus 5y plus 2y minus 10 is equals to 0. Then you factorize 2. Therefore I'm going to have what is common in this 5 bracket. So y into y minus 5, and this one is positive 2 into y minus 5. And I told you must ensure that all the brackets are the same. If they are not, then you need to go back and ensure where you went wrong, you have corrected it. So take one of the brackets, which is y minus 5 and y plus 2 is equals to 0. And for the equation, I said you have to equate each bracket to 0 to obtain a definite answer. This definite answer are the roots. So we want to find out what are the roots for this. So y minus 5 is equals to 0. It means I take 5 from the other side of the equal sign. Alright? So I'm going to have y is equals to positive 5. So y is equals to 5. Then take y plus 2 is equals to 0. Take the other side of the equal sign, y will be negative 2. So y is equals to negative 2 and y is equals to positive 5 are the roots that were used to obtain that given quadratic expression. Okay, so it means these are your quadratic equations, and I've just done a recap of it to ensure that you understand the concept that we learned last time. Now I want to take it a little bit higher now and introduce other formulas that are used to solve quadratic equations and expressions. Remember what I just told you with the first formula, which in mathematical we called product sum rule. Product means multiplication and sum means addition, whereby you look for two numbers. When you add, you obtain b, and when you multiply, you obtain ac. Now for example, if I have this one, x squared plus 4x plus 3 is equals to 0, for example, which numbers can you add? You get 4. The same numbers, when you add, you get positive 3. If I give you that exercise, look for those numbers. Which one will qualify for that? You will spend almost all day and you'll never get the answers to this. That you have two numbers, a plus b must give you 4 and a times b must give you 3. Look for those two numbers. You will spend all day and you will not get that. So what other formulas can be used in an event where you find that you can't find numbers? When you add, you get b, and when you multiply, you get ac. Okay, now I want to give an example. X squared plus 6x plus 9 is equals to 0. This one you can solve it using the product sum rule that we said earlier on. That look for two numbers, when you add you get b, when you multiply you get ac. But in an event whereby this one is not solved in that method, then I'm going to give you a different method. Actually two of them more to add on that first method. Now the first method I want to teach you is completing square method. Completing square method. Okay. Now for you to solve a certain quadratic expression using completing square method, then there are several rules that must be followed one after the other to ensure that you get the right answer for any given equation. Now these rules must be followed to the letter. 1. You must ensure that the coefficient of x squared is 1. Just 1 as a number. But if already like this one now, coefficient of x squared is already 1. So we can forgo the first rule. But if it was, for example, 2, then you must ensure that this coefficient is 1. How do you ensure that? It's by dividing through by 2. All through divide by 2 to ensure that 2 by 2 is 1. So the coefficient here is 1. That's the first rule. Second rule, take the coefficient of C to the other side of the equal sign. That means what? Our coefficient of C, remember A, B, C, we said they are integers, they are numbers. Our A is 2, our B is 6, our C is 9. Therefore, take the coefficient of C to the other side of the equal sign, meaning that I take positive 9 to the other side of the equal sign, it becomes what? Negative 9. Correct. So I'm just listing them down so that when we now embark to the real mathematical part of it, you are able to understand what you're doing. So number C, half or multiply the coefficient of B by a half. So what is the coefficient of B here? 6. So multiply 6 by a half. 6 times half is the same as 6 divided by 2. Okay. So once you do that, that one qualifies to the third rule for completing square method. The fourth rule, then now multiply. Sorry. Now before you multiply, square the coefficient of B and add it on both sides of the equal sign. Once you square the coefficient of B and you add it on both sides, then from there you can now solve for A, B, C, D, E. Now solve for the equation. Once you follow these rules, then you are able to understand how to solve a given quadratic expression using completing square method. Now I want to use this example, following these formulas or rules, to see what will be the answer to that. I hope you have understood those simple rules that they need to be followed from one point to the other. Then I'll prove myself right. Now let me start with the completing square method. I said the first rule, ensure coefficient of x is 1. Already it's 1, therefore that rule is left out. Second rule is to take the coefficient of c to the other side of the equal sign, meaning I'm going to have x squared plus 6x is equals to negative 9. Correct. I've taken the coefficient of c to the other side of the equal sign. From there, we multiply the coefficient of b by a half. Therefore, I'm going to have x squared plus 6x multiplied by a half is equals to negative 9. Multiplication by half is the same as division by 2. Therefore, I'm going to have x squared plus 6 over 2. X is equals to negative 9. Do not simplify at this point. Note, do not simplify now. 2, 2, 3. Do not simplify at this point. Leave it like that. The third rule is you square the coefficient of v and add it on both sides. Add before the equal sign, add after the equal sign. Okay, so I'm going to have x squared plus 6 over 2x, add the square of this, which is 6 over 2 squared, is equals to negative 9 plus 6 over 2 squared. Okay, now I've already added on both sides. Then we proceed. Now at this point I'm going to have x squared plus 6 over 2 x plus 32, or 6 squared is 36, not 32, over 4 is equals to negative 9 plus 36 over 4. Correct. Now at this point, this is a perfect square. So for perfect square, just take the first term, which is x, and the second term is plus 6 over 2. Then you square it. Once you open this bracket, what we had learned before about expansion, then you'll obtain what is on the other part of that sum. So here we're going to have negative 9 plus 36 over 4. This is like over 1. So what's the LCM at that point? LCM between 1 and 4 is 4. So 4 goes to 1 4 times 36 times 9, you get negative 36. Plus 4 into 4 is 1. 1 times 36 is 36. So what is negative 36 plus 36? Negative 1 and positive 1 is 0. So I'm going to have 0 over 4. So I'm going to have x is equals to 6x plus 2. So I'm going to have x plus 6 over 2 is equals to 0 over 4. 0 divided by any number is 0. So definitely this one is 0. So I'm going to have x plus 6 over 2 is 0. So I want to get definite answer for x. Therefore I take this on the other side of the equal sign. So x will be negative 6 over 2. So my x will give me negative 3. I have solved that using completing square method. Just to ensure that actually that is the right thing we have done, I want to use the earlier method that I taught you, which was product sum rule, to ensure that actually we are on the right track. Earlier method we said, look for two numbers. When you add, you get 6. The same numbers you multiply, you get 9. Which numbers are those? 3 and 3. So I'm going to have x squared plus 3x plus 3x plus 9. Then we solve it like that. I'm going to have x into x plus 3, then plus 3 into x plus 3. The brackets are the same, so x plus 3 and x plus 3 is equals to 0, which means that is the same as x plus 3 squared is equals to 0. We are getting the value of x, so find the square root. So the square root is the same as a half, so multiply by half, the 2 and the square root cancel. So I'm going to have x plus 3 is equals to 0. The square root over 0 is 0. Therefore, take this on the other side of the equal sign. I'm going to have x is equals to negative 3. You realize that actually you have the same answer when I'm using completing square method and when I'm using product sum rule. Now, I want you to try one before I even give you another one, another tip or another formula that we are going to use. I told you earlier on there are 3 formulas that we are going to use. The first one is product sum rule, and the second one is now completing square method. I'll give you the third one, but before I do that, I want you to try this on your free time before we come back to our another lesson. So I'm going to have 2x squared, then add 3x minus 1 is equals to 0. Try using completing square method, try using product sum rule, and see if it works. If it doesn't, then you know where to start from and do a recap of that. So don't go far, stay tuned. Welcome back. When we left for a short break, I left you with a small assignment to solve using either of the method that I've taught you. So I want to go through the 2 of them, then I introduce the third one, then from there we are going to finalize on the quadratic expressions and equations. Now, let's start from the completing square method. Completing square method. That's what we learned latest. Let me use a red pen now. I have 2x squared plus 3x plus 1 is equals to 0. How do we solve now using completing square method? I said there are rules to be followed. Rule number 1, I said you ensure the coefficient of x squared is 1. Therefore, how do I ensure that? I'm going to divide through by 2 by 2. So I'm going to have x squared plus 3 over 2x plus a half is equals to 0. 0 divided by 2 is 0. Then next step, take the coefficient of c to the other side of the equal sign. Therefore I'm going to have x squared plus 3 over 2x is equals to negative a half. I'm just taking you step by step so that you understand the rules and how they apply in any given question. Then after the second rule, where do you go to? The third rule, which is you half, or you multiply the coefficient of b by a half. So if I multiply 3 over 2 times a half, I'm going to have 3 over 4, right? So 3 times 1 is 3, 2 times 2 is 3. Therefore I'm going to have x squared plus 3 over 4x is equals to negative a half. Correct. From there, where do you go to? We square the coefficient of b and add it on both sides. We add before the equal sign and we add after the equal sign, which means we're going to have x squared plus 3 over 4x plus 3 over 4 squared. Remember, we are only squaring the coefficient, and the coefficient is integer, a number, not the letter. Remember that. So is equals to negative a half plus 3 over 4 squared. Now let's open this. We're going to have x squared plus 3 over 4x plus 9 over 16 will give us negative a half plus 9 over 16. At this point in time, we realize that this is a perfect square. Therefore, for perfect square, now take the first term, which is x, and the second term, which is plus 3 over 4, then you square it. This will give us negative a half plus 9 over 16. Now at this point, we have fractions. We can solve them using LCM. Now x plus 3 over 4 squared is equals to negative a half plus 9 over 16. What is the LCM on the right hand side? 16, correct. So 16 goes to 2 8 times. So 8 times negative 1 is negative 8. Plus 16 goes to 16 1. So 1 times 9 is 9. This tells us that I want to have x plus 3 over 4 squared is equals to negative 8 plus 9 is positive 1. So I'm going to have 1 over 16. Okay. Now from there we solve it. But we can't solve it when we have the square there. So we find the square root for both sides so that we can cancel the square root with the square. So I'm going to have x plus 3 over 4 is equals to square root of 1 is 1, square root of 16 is 4. So I'm going to have 1 over 4. And remember, square root of a number is either positive or negative. So we have positive or negative a quarter. Now remember, you are solving for the unknown, which is x. So we want to remain with x here. So we take everything to the other side of the equal sign. So x is the same as negative or positive a quarter minus 3 over 4. Correct. Alright. Now let's solve for it. When we have positive 1 over 4 minus a quarter, remember the LCM is the same, so we can just work with the numerator, retain the LCM. So what is positive 1 minus 3? That is negative 2 over 4, giving us negative a half. So the first x is negative a half. Now what happens when we have now negative 1 minus 3? That gives us negative 4. So we have negative 4 over the LCM, which is 4, give us negative 1. So my x is either negative a half or negative 1. Those are the solutions using completing square method. Now, can you try? Is it workable using product sum rule, the first rule that I taught you? So the question is, we have 2x squared plus 3x plus 1 is equals to 0. In the first example, I said you look for two numbers. When you add, you get 3. The same numbers, when you multiply, you get AC. So which numbers can I add? I get 3. I multiply the same numbers, I get 2. 3 or 2 and 1, correct. 2 and 1. So 2 plus 1 is 3. 2 multiplied by 1 is 2, which is AC. So I'm going to have the same. So I have 2x squared plus 2x plus x plus 1 is equals to 0. Okay, so I group them, I factorize What is common here? 2 is common, so I'm going to have 2x into x plus 1 is equals to 1, not is equals, but plus 1 into x plus 1 is equals to 0. Okay, so once the brackets are the same, now I can solve it. I'm going to have x plus 1 and 2x plus 1 is equals to 0. Now for you to solve this unknown of x, you equate each bracket to 0. So let me start with the first one. X plus 1 is equals to 0. So 1 on the other side, x will be 0 minus 1. So my x will be negative 1. Then this one is, the other one is 2x plus 1. 2x plus 1 is equals to 0. So take 1 the other side of the equation. I'm going to have 2x is equals to 0 plus, okay, minus 1. Because this is positive, it goes there, it becomes a negative. So I'm going to have 2x is equals to negative 1. Divide both sides by 2, divide by 2. So my x there is negative a half. You realize that actually using completing square method, we got x is equals to negative a half or negative 1. Using product sum rule, we have realized that we have x is equals to negative 1 and negative a half. It means all these methods will give us the same answer. Now I want to introduce to you another method called the quadratic formula. But instead of me just writing the formula how it looks like, I want to derive that formula, then use it to solve any given quadratic expression. The formula for quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So this is the quadratic formula. This is the quadratic formula. But where do we get this formula from? I want to derive that. So I have an equation ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. That I told is the general formula for quadratic equations and expressions. Now I want to use completing square method on this to obtain this formula. So ensure that you go with me. Now what is the first rule for completing square method? Is to ensure coefficient of x squared is 1. That means we are going to divide through by a. So divide by a, divide by a, divide by a, divide by a. I'm going to have x squared plus b over a x plus c over a is equals to 0. Second rule, take the coefficient of c on the other side of the equal sign. So we have x squared plus b over a x is equals to negative c over a. Third rule, square the coefficient of b. Before you square, you half, multiply by a half. So I'm going to have b over a times a half is the same as x squared plus b over 2a. Remember, b over a times a half, b times 1 is b, a times 2 is 2a. Then x is equals to negative c over a, right? Now, square this coefficient of b and you add it on both sides of the equal sign. Remember, those are the rules for completing square method. So x squared plus b over 2a x plus b over 2a squared is equals to negative c over a plus b over 2a squared. I have squared the coefficient of b, I have added on both sides of the equal sign. Now let's open up this. We're going to have what? X squared plus b over 2ax plus b squared over 4a squared is equals to negative c over a plus b squared over 4a squared. Remember now, this is a perfect square. And I said, what do we do with the perfect square at this point? Take the first term, which is x, and the second term, which is b over 2a, then you square it. If you open this bracket, the way we have done on expansion, you'll obtain this given expression. This now equals to negative c over a plus b over 4a squared. Correct. We proceed. At this point now we can find the LCM between a and 4a squared, which is the same as 4a squared. The LCM is 4a squared. So 4a squared comes to a, how many times? 4a. So 4a times negative c is negative 4ac. Then 4a squared to 4a squared is 1s. So 1 times b, remember this is b squared. You get positive b squared. We can rearrange this format and have b squared minus 4ac over 4a squared. It doesn't change anything in the given expression. Now bring this part here. We are going to have what? X plus b over 2a squared is equals to what we have, b squared minus 4ac over 4a squared. I said at this point we can't proceed further unless we get rid of this square sign. So find square root on both sides. So I'm going to have x plus b over 2a is equals to, remember I said square root of a number is either positive or negative. So I'm going to have positive or negative square root of, let's start with the numerator. B squared, the square root of b squared is b. Of 4 is 2. But of a and c you can't find because they are unknown and they are not perfect squares. But the new denominator by 4 is 2 and a squared is a. So you can actually readily find the square root of the denominator. But for the numerator, because these are not perfect squares, they are just letters, you can't find the square root. So therefore, you leave the square root on the numerator part of it. You are going to have b squared minus 4ac over square root of this one is 2a. Okay, remember we are finding the value of x, so take this on the other side of the equal sign. Okay, so my x will be, this is positive, it crosses there, it becomes a negative, so I'm going to have negative b over 2a plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Now the LCM are the same, we can work out the numerator. So I'm going to have x is equals to negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And this is the quadratic formula that I had given you earlier on. Now we are going to use the same formula now to solve for other quadratic equation. Now you have three good formulas. Number one is the product sum rule, number two is the completing square method, and now number three is the quadratic formula. Now I want to just get an example and we solve using the three formulas. Then from there I think you'll be better enough to understand this topic called quadratic equations and expression. I want to use a very simple question. X squared plus 5x plus 6 is equals to 0. I want you to solve this equation using the three formulas. So the first one I want to start is the product sum rule, the one that we started with. Let me now demarcate this into three parts so that we prove those answers correctly. Now, product sum rule, we said you look for two numbers. When you add, you get positive 5, which is b. When you multiply, you get ac, which is 1 times 6 is 6. Which numbers are those? 3 and 2. Correct. So 3 plus 2 is 5. 3 times 2 is 6. I'm going to have x squared plus 3x plus 2x plus 6 is equals to 0. So I factorize the 2. So I'm going to have x into x plus 3 plus 2 into x plus 3 is equals to 0. Therefore I'm going to have x plus 3 and x plus 2 is equals to 0. Then equate each bracket to 0. Okay, so I'm going to have x plus 3 is equals to 0. So on the other side becomes x is equals to negative 3. And this one is x plus 2 is equals to 0. The other side of the equal sign becomes a negative, so x is equals to negative 2. So my x is negative 3, negative 2, or negative 3, using product sum rule. Okay, now using completing square method, the same equation, x plus 2 plus 5 of x plus 6 is equals to 0. The first rule, ensure coefficient of x is 1. Therefore it's already 1, so we move the second rule. Take the coefficient of c to the other side of the equal sign. So I'm going to have x squared plus 5x is equals to negative 6. Half the coefficient of b. X squared plus 5 over 2x is equals to negative 6. Okay, so square this and add it on both sides. I'm going to have x squared plus 5 over 2x plus 5 over 2 squared is equals to negative 6 plus 5 over 2 squared. So here I'm going to have x squared plus 5 over 2, x plus 25 over 4 is equals to negative 6 plus 25 over 4. Okay, at this point in time, this is a perfect square. Therefore, take the first term, which is x, the second term is 5 over 2, then square it, is equals to negative 6 plus 25 over 4. Remember, this is like over 1. That is a fraction. Therefore, the LCM between these fractions, LCM is 4. So 4 into 1 is 4 times 6 is negative 24. Plus 4 into 4 is 1. So 1 times 25 is 25. Positive 24 plus negative 24 plus positive 25 gives us negative or positive 1. Correct. I'm going to have x plus 5 over 2 squared is equals to 1 over 4. Remember, square root, at this point you find the square root. Remember, square root is positive or negative of a number. Therefore, I'm going to have x plus 5 over 2 is equals to positive or minus a quarter. So to get x, take this on the other side of the equal sign. So x will be positive or minus a quarter minus 5 over 2. Because this is positive, it crosses there, it becomes a negative. Now let's solve it. When it's positive, remember LCM are the same. At this point, I didn't find the square root of 4, which is 2. Square root of 4 is 2, correct. At this point in time, this is what? 5 over 2. X 5 over 2 is equals to a quarter. So x is 5 over 2 is equals to 1 over 2. Correct. So this is 1 over 2. Now the LCM are the same. So we want to find the value of x. So when it's positive 1 minus 5. What is 1 minus 5? That is negative 4. So x will be negative 4 over 2, giving us negative 2. When it's negative, you're going to have negative 1 minus 5, which is negative 6. So x will be negative 6 over 2, which is negative 3. So my x is negative 2 or negative 3. That is using completing square method. Now, what about when you're using product sum rule? The formula is negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Remember, a, b, c are integers. Integers of a is 1, integer of b is 5, integer of c is 6. Therefore, just take those integers and replace them, substitute them where we have a, b, and c. So negative b is negative 5. So I'm going to have negative 5 plus or minus square root of b squared, b is 5, 5 squared is 25, minus 4ac, 4 times a, my a is 1, so that's 4 times 1, which is 4. My c is 6, so 4 times 1 times 6 is 24, over 2a, my a is 1, so that's 2 times 1 is 2. So solve it. Negative 5 plus or minus 25 minus 24 is 1. Square root of 1 is 1 over 2. Okay, so negative 5 plus 1, negative 4 over 2, giving us negative 2. Negative 5 minus 1 is negative 6 over 2, giving us negative 3. So my x is negative 2 or negative 3. You realize that actually all these formulas have given us the same answer. But in an exam situation, an examiner can decide to be specific, that solve that using completing square method. And therefore it's very, very important for you to understand that you need to understand all these formulas from the word go. Using product sum rule, I've solved it. Look for two numbers. When you add, you get b. When you multiply, you get ac. I've done that using that, and I've gotten our x is negative 2 and x is negative 3. Using completing square method, I gave you the rules earlier on. Ensure that you go through them one by one. Each rule, if you skip a rule, it means you have gone already short of that question. Therefore, follow those rules as I wrote them earlier on. Ensure that you get those steps as I did on my question, and I got those answers. S is negative 2 and negative 3. I also derived this formula using the same completing square method, and I've used the same formula to obtain the value of x. Remember, this is x is equals to negative b. That is the formula. Okay, so just replace. Remember, I told you a, b, c are integers. Just replace those or substitute those letters with the numbers. Negative b is the b. So positive 5 and negative 5 is negative 5. negative 5 plus or minus, the b squared is 5 squared, which is 25. Then 4ac is 4 times a times c. A and c is 1 times 6, which is 6, so times 4 gives us 24. So 25 minus 24 gives us 1, and the square root of 1 is 1. So I'm going to have 5 plus or minus 1 over the denominator, which is 2. So take the first one, negative 5 plus 1, you get negative 4. Divided by 2, you get negative 2. Negative 5 minus 1, you get negative 6. Divided by 2, you obtain negative 3. And those are the solutions to that given quadratic expression. Now let's try one more. Let's try one more, following all those procedures that we've had for the day. Let's try one more. Now, suppose you have this given equation. Suppose you have 2x squared plus 3x then plus 1 is equals to 0. Then how do you go about it? Before I do it, I just want to leave you as an assignment. This assignment, try and use the 3 methods. 1, product sum rule. Method 2 is completing square method. And number 3 is quadratic formula. Just try and acquaint yourself with those formulas, because for your good in an exam situation whereby an examiner can decide to tell you to use a specific formula. Just do it. When you get it right, the better. When you get it wrong, we are here to correct you. Always interact with us on the social media platform that are running down your screen, and we shall be able to help you advance in mathematics. Till we meet next time, stay tuned and God bless.